Hi. So, hi, baby. Hi. Hi. I just got back from taking him on a walk. Hi. He's like, I is camera puppy right now, Mom. No hats this time. No, I'm not gonna put hats on your head this time. Yes, I know you're sweet. Okay. Okay, so no Digimon stuff in the background, but I am going to be doing another Digimon video at the moment. This is going to be me talking about Gennai. So there are kind of 3 different variations of Gennai that we are introduced to throughout the course of the series. Just ignore, either watch the dog in the background and listen to me talk, or ignore the dog. One of the two. He's like, I'm gonna rub my nose and my face all over the bed. Hi. Hi. He's like, hi, puppy. I know. No, are you done? Are you gonna lay down? Or sit? You just gonna sit. You're exactly where I'm gonna put the pictures. Ready? Pictures? I love the dog. He's like, I is can photobomb. I put my butt on the picture. Either lay down. Okay, fine. Okay, sure, go ahead, whatever. Okay, so, and now he wants out. I love him, I do. He's like, okay, I gave them a dog treat, now I is leave. Okay, so, as I was attempting to say before the dog decided to be a part of the video and then leave, this video is going to be about Gennai, who is kind of this guiding character in Digimon in the first season. I know that he pops up subsequently, not like in other series of Digimon. Like, I don't think that he's in Tamers or Frontier, or at least not as far as I can remember, unless they like cut him out, and I just don't remember them doing that. But I know that he's in the original series of season of Digimon, Digimon Adventures, and then Digimon 2.0, and then he is in Digimon Tri, and then Digimon Adventure Tri, and then Digimon The Last Evolution. I know that he's in all those, and it is stated that anytime that it is Gennai himself, it is the same character. There is a different character, and I'll explain him. And so, you know, we see all of them of the different of Gennai throughout the course of that series, and we get like a fairly good idea of kind of, you know, where his loyalties lie. He obviously cares quite a bit about the Digidestined and the Digimon and the digital world. Now there are 3 different versions of Gennai. The first version is the old man version, and the old man version is the one that the Digidestined are originally introduced to. They end up meeting him just after they finish defeating Devimon on File Island. They defeat Devimon, and then they end up interacting with this hologram. And he's like, well, my name's Gennai, and I'm on the other side of the ocean, and if you come across the, you know, this, I don't remember what the ocean was called, but come across the sea to the continent of Server, and that's where I am. And we need your help here, and if you follow a certain path, you'll find tags and crests that will help increase your Digimon's power. And I'm like, I'm on my way to church this morning. I'm actually recording this on Halloween itself, because I had all the Halloween videos finished. And what I realized when I'm on my way to church is, well, I am wearing a Star Wars Rebels shirt, but I'm like sitting there in the car and I'm like, Gennai is kind of like Yoda. A little bit, yeah. He's a little bit like Yoda. Doesn't talk in as many riddles, and as far as I'm aware, he's not as old as Yoda. He's also not small and green. But we're introduced to him initially as a hologram, so I kind of put him as like somewhere between like Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi, I guess is kind of a good way of defining him for a little bit of that context of what he is. He's a guide character in the series, help point the kids in their next direction of where they need to go. Go from File Island to the continent of Server. You need to find these things called tags and crests, and they'll help your Digimon get stronger. and you come find me and I'll help get you more information. And he subsequently sends them more information, of course, throughout the course of the original series. But the old man version is the first one that we're introduced to in the hologram. And he communicates with Izzy a fair amount throughout the course of that season. He tells him, go to server and make your way through the continent of server, and I'll send you something that'll help you get to where I live. Unfortunately, they don't end up getting to where Myotis into where Gennai lives until after they fought against Myotismon. And we get a little bit more of Gennai's backstory. Now, the other two versions of Gennai that I will be talking about are the younger version, which we're introduced to after the older version. Technically first in a flashback, and then later on he's like younger, he got younger type of thing, and then there's the Dark Gennai. Dark Gennai is going to be a separate video altogether. Because I wanted to. So for the older Gennai, what happens is the Digidestined, they fight against Myotismon initially in the digital world, and they kind of get their butts handed to them a little bit, yeah. And they then end up going and they, Myotismon and his Digimon head into, the real world and everything. And, then the Digidestined have to then find a way to get into the real world. And they're like, well, there's this gate, but we don't exactly know how to get through said gate. So they end up, Gennai sends him a message, and he sent Izzy's computer some interesting updates over the course of the time that they were all separated. And once they got back together, he sent Izzy some updates on his computer to help make it better. And they get to this lake, and he's like, well, if you follow this path, you'll get to where my house is. And they get to this lake, and then they go into the lake because the lake parts not quite Red Sea, but parts, and then there's a staircase, and they go down the staircase into this very nice house that is a Japanese style house, with a nice garden and everything, and it's underwater. And I'm like, okay, you get an A for why is this down here, but I'm okay with it being down here. So we get that introduction there to where Gennai lives. And then, Gennai explains to the Digidestined, well, there is an 8th child, and Myotismon is going to find the 8th child in the real world. That's why he went there. And there is, you need to find the 8th child, and you need to find their tag and crest and their Digivice and get them all to the Digimon, to the 8th Digidestined, and to, and find their Digimon. I'm going to get with one of my reasons for why I'm annoyed at Gennai in a minute, but Gennai is talking with them, and they're like, well, how are we supposed to get back to the real world? That gate closed. And it's like, well, yeah, but there's this, there is a way to get back there. And he gives them this deck of cards that are, have different Digimon on them, and, they're different types and levels and stuff. And it's you have to put them in the right order on the gate, on this stone tablet thing. And to be able to get into, pass through the, gate into the real world. And that's what Myotismon did. And they have to go through the gate to get in there. And, they have to pick the right cards and do that. And, they're like, okay, so that's what we're going to do. Yeah, that's what you're going to do. And, he lets them spend the night. And he takes Izzy's computer and he upgrades it some more. And he's like, now it's got a Digimon analyzer on it. So it'll tell him more about the Digimon that they interact with and such, and help him with more information. And he's able to communicate with Izzy quite a bit throughout the course of the rest of the season when they're in the real world. And then when they then come back to the digital world. Once they go into the real world, actually, Izzy and Gennai actually get along really well. And it's kind of hinted that, even after the Digidestined are, after, in between when the, Ty's initial group, when Ty's group get back into the real world after they've defeated the Dark Masters and Apocalypse, and then before Davis and his group come in, we know that at least Gennai has been in some communication with the Digidestined, at least with Izzy, which I will get to. But the thing that annoys me about what happened with Gennai is, okay, Gennai's background is he is what is referred to as an agent. And agents are these people that are kind of in charge of helping keep balance in the digital world. You know, kind of not necessarily always making sure that like good is the thing that's in power, but keeping, you know, things balanced. And they kind of work directly with homeostasis, which I am going to do a video about homeostasis. Homeostasis is just kind of this like presence in the digital world that communicates through Kari multiple times throughout the course of this, in the original series, and then in the second, and then in Digimon Tri. And what else happens is Gennai also works for the celestial Digimon, Azulongmon and such. That it's, you know, it's his job to help keep the world in balance, and that's what the agents do. And we do find out that the agents were actually the ones that created the tags and the crest and the Digi eggs that held the original 8 Digimon in, that were the Digi-Destined's Digimon. And the thing that annoys me about Gennai is that, okay, Gennai, you were part of the group that analyzed all the kids that were chosen to be Digi-Destined. You know that it is Ty's sister, that it is Kari, that is the 8th Digi-Destined. So why don't you just tell Ty? Why don't you just tell them? You can save them so much trouble by just telling them that, yeah, Kari's the 8th Digi-Destined. Your sister, yeah, you know, your sister Kari, yeah, she's the 8th Digi-Destined. I don't know who her Digimon is, but she's the 8th Digi-Destined. And she had a crest, and, you know, she had a crest and she had a Digivice, and Digivice should have gone into the world and found her, or might be in an area near her, so, you know, find that. And then it just, like, could have been, like, Ty could have, like, actually been able to, like, determine that, oh, yeah, this is Kari, and find her the Digivice, and it reacts, and, like, all that stuff. And I was like, just save them so much trouble. But they didn't. Because reasons. I don't know if it was just like the, you know, you must find her on your own and figure out that it's her on her own, or divine intervention with Godamon and Wizardmon and the Digivice, and oh god, I don't know exactly what happens with that, but I'm just like, oh my god, Gennai, you could have just told them that it was Kari and saved them so much frustration and trouble. But what ends up happening is, of course, you know, they go back to the real world, and then Gennai is in quite a bit of communication with Izzy. He keeps sending Izzy, like, emails and helping him and stuff. And then when Izzy and his parents' apartment complex is attacked by the Bakumon, Gennai actually sends Izzy this type of, it's a firewall that, like, ends up putting it up around, like, their apartment specifically to prevent the Bakumon from, like, seeing Izzy and his parents. And that's actually a very helpful thing that happens, because, like, almost as soon as the firewall is in place, you know, the Bakumon come in, and they just see, like, we see from, like, Izzy's parents' point of view, the Bakumon looking at them, and, like, they're holding, like, cooking utensils as weapons for all intents and purposes, and the Bakumon are just like, huh, nope, nothing here but some floating kitchenware. Nope, move on to the next apartment, and they just leave. And I'm just like, how stupid are these guys? Then again, the Bakumon are not really all that smart, being the main reason. They're not all that smart. But what ends up happening is, you know, Gennai tells Izzy, you know, it's like, you need to do this, and, like, you know, you need to, you know, this is where, like, the main center of everything is. And he tells him it's, you know, the TV station, and that's why Izzy then goes to the TV station. And he, you know, Gennai's kind of a plot device, but he's at least interesting. And, you know, that's where Izzy goes to the TV station, and that's where he meets Matt and TK's dad, and then, you know, that helps with some of that stuff. And then after Myotismon is defeated for the first time by Anjumamon, I apologize if you can hear, like, the washer in the background. I don't know if the mic will pick it up or not. My mom's doing laundry. But what happens is, after they defeat Myotismon for the first time, you know, they get Godamon on their side, and her and Kari are united, and Wizardmon dies, and they, you know, she digivolves and turns into Anjumamon and destroys Myotismon with an arrow through the chest, which is one of the satisfying deaths, but unfortunately it doesn't last long, because then, of course, you know, Gennai sends Izzy this message. It's like, oh, well, there's this prophecy about, you know, wings of darkness and the hour of the beast, and, you know, angels of light and hope and arrows and, you know, loved ones and more power and, like, all this other stuff. Just like, okay, you couldn't have told us about this prophecy earlier? old dude that lives in a lake. And so Jedi gives them this information, and then they have to like decipher the prophecy of like, oh, it's Kari and TK and like angels of light and hope, and shoot the arrows at Ty and Matt, and then they get War Greymon and Metal Garurumon, of course, and then they're able to defeat Venom Myotismon. Once they defeat Venom Myotismon, then they literally almost as soon as they defeat him or like see their parents again, then it's just like, oh, now we have to go back to the digital world because now it's appearing in the sky above our heads, which is not normal. And they all get teleported back to the digital world. And Izzy still has a little bit of communication with Gennai here and there, not too much throughout that bit, but he still like sends Izzy some information. And then the next main time that we end up interacting with Gennai for the Digidestined is when after they've defeated the Dark Masters, Gennai then later tells them that there's this other prophecy that I found out about, and it's like after the Dark Masters there will be another power that will happen, and you have to fight that. There'll be like he ends up going to a place that is called the Wall of Fire, so it's like it's a firewall because Digimon and computer jokes. Wall of Fire, firewall, file island, continent of server. So many. But Gennai, tells the Digimon that there's another evil out there, and that ends up being Apocalypse. And they fight against Apocalypse, and they defeat Apocalypse, of course. And then the Gennai shows up with Centaurumon, because reasons, I guess they're friends. I don't know. But they show up. And like Gennai's inside of this, what are they called? It's not Machinedramon. It's like something else. It's like another type of like a Digimon that you can like get inside of and like control. It's a machine. It's kind of like a Gundam, not as big as a Gundam though. And they look down as like everything is being recreated because like the going through and defeating each of the Dark Masters destroyed parts of the digital world that had been corrupted by them and destroyed by them. And then Apocalypse was kind of like had like absorbed a bunch of that data. And then the Digidestined, after they defeated him, now all that data has then been released back into the digital world. And then watch as everything gets reformed, and it starts with File Island itself getting reformed. And they still have the Digimon that had been part of their army that had helped fight against Piedmon. They're still okay, so Electmon's still okay, and Ogremon, and I've been over the other ones that were part of the army in previous Digimon Friend videos. But what happens is like the island, File Island, is kind of where everything starts, and it starts to reform, and then they end up at Primary Village, of course, and then all of the Digi-Eggs come raining down from the sky. And they're like, oh, why don't we all just take a giant picture? And, Gennai's part of the big picture that they have. And then, Gennai explains to them, because, like, the Digidestined are like, oh, well, we could just relax and stay here for, like, the rest of the summer, like, the summer via, however long the summer would be in our world, we can stay here in the digital world for that, duration of time. And Gennai shows up and basically, like, bursts their bubble. And he's just like, okay, well, from the moment Apocalypse appeared, your world and this world's times have synced up. So whatever, because before, I think before they kind of determined that, like, for every minute that had passed in the digital world, or no, it was every day that had passed in the real world. No, I'm getting this mixed up. Sorry. Every day that had passed in the digital world, only a minute had passed in the real world. So, they could be in the digital world for like so many weeks or so many more days in the digital world, and it would only be like a couple of minutes in the real world, or maybe like a half hour at the most. If they wanted to stay for another 30 days, they could just be in the digital world for, not be back in the real world for like 30 minutes, and like their parents wouldn't really notice. But Gennai's like, no, now they're synced up, so every all the time is moving at the same time frame. And he's like, they're like, okay, well then we'll just stay here until the summer's over. We'll like either hop back and tell our parents that, oh, we're gonna go back to the digital world for a while, and we'll see after, at the end of summer, type of a thing. everything's all fine, we're okay, nobody died. Well, somebody died. Leomon died. That went darker than I anticipated it. Sorry. But what ends up happening is Jedi's like, well, no, you can't stay that amount of time because yeah, things are synced, but you have like 2 hours until the gate closes between the real world and the digital world, and if you don't go back, then you won't ever be able to go back home. Which is kind of a lie because the digital world and the real world, the gate opens up every now and then, but it's like we don't know when the next time the gate would be open, so Jedi is kind of like, well, you either have to stay here and you're stuck here until the gate opens again, which we don't know how long that would be, and your parents would worry about you, or you go back and yeah, the gate may open again, but at least you're with your parents and your Digimon are okay here in the real world, and like I'll take care of them and everything. And he gives them, he's like, well, he gives them like the train and everything, the railway car, which I'm still like, he's still like, well, I borrowed this from like San Francisco, so can you return it? I'm like, apparently Jedi has a bit of I was gonna say narcolepsy, but that's the inability to sleep, I think. Um, he likes to steal things. I'm like, how do you steal a train, or how do you steal a train car? How did you do that? And why haven't you returned it? But it's just like, it's like you have this, take it back and you can use it to go back and everything, and they do. And of course, they all say goodbye to their Digimon and they say goodbye to their friends and everything, and they get on the train and then they head back to the real world. The next time that they interact with Gennai is we see this in the Digimon movie, during the middle section where they're dealing with Geoboromon. Gennai messages Ty and Izzy, and he, gets in communication with them, and he explains to them that the dog is outside the door again. I'll let him in. Let's see what happens. You want to come in or not? You either have to stay in here or you go back up. I have dog. Up. Okay, fine. Go around me and then go up on the bed. I don't know. Your tail's in the frame. You're not, but your tail is. He's like, I want the window, but it's closed and covered. He's like, where are you doing that? Are you going to stare at me for a while? Lay down, sit, whatever. I'll wait for His Highness to get comfy. He's like, no, I want the window. And I need to keep recording, you silly dog. Okay, no, I'm not opening the window. I gotta record. That messes with the light. I know. Come down here then. Lay down, curl up, whatever. One of two. Whatever. And what ends up happening is Gennai. Okay, fine. Sit there and I'll pet you. He's like, they get to see me twice in the video now. I know. You're fluffy. He's like, oh, that feels good. He's like, oh, that feels good, mommy. Oh, that feels good. Oh, sure. Sneeze. Go ahead. And what ends up happening is, of course, during the Digimon movie, this is when Ty and Izzy interact with Gennai, and he tells them that, oh, there's this threat coming, and we detected this threat, and now the dog wants out of the room. Can I at least finish a sentence? He's like, do I have to let you finish the sentence, or can you open the door first? So here's what happened. I let the dog out, and then the swords fell, and I had to catch them, and then put them back, because they fall. Okay, so let's see if I can finish just talking about Gennai a little bit. So, the other part that happens with Gennai is, of course, during the Digimon movie, Izzy and Ty end up interacting with well, it starts off as Kuramon and Karamon and all that, and they interact with Jedi, and Jedi's like, well, there's this threat that's on the internet, and we don't think it's necessarily a Digimon. It's just taken on the form of a Digimon, Diaboromon, of course. And and he's we see him have the rest of the Digimon with him. He has all of their partner Digimon staying with him at his, like, I'm assuming, underwater estate. I'm assuming. And it's like, I'll get Agumon and Tentamon set to go up onto the net to come and help you guys, and like he kind of helps a little bit throughout the rest of the movie. And then the next kind of touch point that we get for Gennai is we find out in season 2 that at some point after what happened with Diaboromon, but before the Digidestin all got to go back to the digital world with like Ty and with when Davis and his group got introduced to the digital world, what happened was Gennai had brought the Digidestin, the original 8, back to the digital world and told them that in order to help, rejuvenate the digital world to help increase its defenses, they each had to give up power from their crests in order to do this, to add another layer, an extra layer of protection to the digital world, which of course all of them did. And they gave up that power then, and like it's kind of stated as like it was like their Digimon had to give up a piece of themselves, which kind of makes sense because you're giving up this next form that you can turn into. And then they go back to the real world, and then we don't really hear from Gennai for a while until we get to a good distance into season 2. We heard about him, but we don't really talk to him. And the next time that we end up meeting Gennai is he has now turned into a young man. But, and I skipped over this a tiny bit because I'll go over more of it in the homeostasis video, but we find out during a flashback that we get where like Kari is possessed by homeostasis and telling Ty and the other 7 and their Digimon about how how they were picked, and their Digidestin, their Digimon and their crests and their Digivices and everything. And Gennai had been part of that group that had been creating them, and that Gennai had initially been this much younger man, one of the agents, and when Piedmon and the other Dark Masters attacked and their forces attacked so many years ago, Gennai was infected with something by Piedmon that would then later make him age into his very old form. And Gennai had managed to, very badass moment for Gennai, he steals one of the Digimon, the mechanical Digimon that he can get inside of. He opens the hatch on one and throws out whatever Digimon was inside of it, and like climbs in and closes it. And then he grabs all 8 of the Digi-Eggs with the crests and the tags connected and the Digivices connected to them, and grabs all of them, and he flies out. And he's, flying off and everything. And unfortunately what happens is he gets attacked by Piedmon or one of the other Dark Masters, and one of the Digi-Eggs falls. That's Gaudamon's Digi-Egg. And like, the Digidestin are watching this happen via like hologram, seeing all this happen. And Gaudamon's like, so that's why I was left behind. And Biomon's like, yeah, but you're with us now. And it's just like, yeah. Like, yes, that is the important thing. Focus on that part. And and Gennai then, flies to File Island, and then he, I wouldn't say raises the Digimon, because if he raised them, then they would know who he was. But it's just hinted that, like, he took them to File Island, and then he took all the tags and crests with him, and left the Digimon there. And, left the eggs on File Island at the primary village for where they hatched. And then, then the Digimon then grew up, and then their Digivices, and they had, like, the Digivices with them, and then the Digivices went off one day, and then, like, Ty and the others showed up. In regards to how long that actually was between, like, digital world time, I don't know. Because, like, for the Digidestin in the real world, that took, like, 3 or 4 years between when they first interacted with the Digimon, when, like, Ty and Kari first interact with the Red Greymon. Up until this point in time is like 4 or 5, 3, 4, 5-ish years ago. At that point in time, and in the digital world, time passes so much slower, or time passes so much quicker in the digital world. But like it had took them time to like design the, find the exact partner and the exact crest and like all this other stuff. So it was like it may not have taken as long. I don't know. Plus, it took time for them to all hatch and everything. And but then Jedi, he had stated that Jedi like takes the tags and like hides the tags, and then like at some point Devimon got a hold of the tags, and then hid them himself. But Jedi then went back to the continent of Server, and set up his little underwater house, and then like turned in from like a young man into an old man. Um, but what happens is season 2 comes around, and Izzy explains that like, oh, we have this friend coming, and he opens his computers, and like out comes this guy in like a white robe and everything, and he takes his hood off, and he's a young Jedi, and they're like, oh, Jedi. And he's like, yeah, I guess I fixed that weird disease bug data thing or whatever that like Piedmon put into me so many years ago. I finally fixed it now that the Dark Masters are gone. um, and so he's young again and everything, and Yolei's like, oh, he's cute. And they and then Jedi explains, well, I've been talking with Azulongmon. This is after they've interacted with Azulongmon. This is taking place just at Christmas time. In Christmas time for the second generation of Digidestined, where like the Digimon have come into the real world, and like the Digimon actually are attacking all over the place because Arukenimon and Mummymon are causing problems. And Jedi shows up, and he has one of Azulongmon's Digicores with him, which is this blue orb that holds a part of Azulongmon's power in it. And he tells them, well, I brought this power from Azulongmon to help your Digimon be able to digivolve to their fully evolved forms. Or in this case, like Tai and Agumon, Tai and Matt getting their Digimon all the way up to their ultimate forms, War Greymon and Metal Garurumon, and then the other ones up to their Mega forms. No, it's Megaforms is the higher. I always forget that. I'm sorry. I apologize. I know I've slipped up on that multiple times in the videos, but like their third form and there's their second form. And like he gives that to them, and this power also ends up interacting with Davis and Ken with their Digimon, and that allowed Pyldramon to digivolve into Pyldramon into frick. I know this without looking it up. Into come on, I can do this without looking it up. I know this. Pyldramon, Paladin mode. Frick. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, I had to look it up. It's Imperial Dramon. I'm sorry. Imperial Dramon, Dragon mode, and then later on into Fighter mode. But Jedi gives him that power, and then he's like, okay, now you got to go all around the world and help all these other Digidestined, lead all these other Digimon back to the real world, or back to these certain gates, and then take them and send them back to the digital world. So that way they're not causing trouble in the real world until they get back to where they're supposed to be. And he sends them off, and this is where they end up interacting with a bunch of his copies or clones. And what happens is we have Benjamin, who is the Gennai counterpart in America. He's a reference to Benjamin Franklin. He helps Mimi and Davis and Michael round up the Digimon that are in New York City and then send them back. Then there is Jackie, who is the Chinese counterpart to Gennai, who is Jackie Chan. He's a reference to Jackie Chan, and he even like tries to like pretend that he knows karate or whatever. And like he helps Izzy and Kari and the Poi brothers with the Digimon that are in Hong Kong and in the China area. And then there is the Australian version, who is Hogan / Eucalyptus. The English name is a reference to Paul Hogan, who I want to say he's Crocodile Dundee, but I'm not sure. Although they could have just called him. They could have just named him like Irwin or Steve or something like that, and it would have been a reference to like Steve Irwin at the time. That would have been fine. But the eucalyptus is of course a reference to like the plant eucalyptus. and he helps Cody and Joe and Derek down in Australia. He's dressed up as like Santa the first time they interact with him, and then he like pulls off the Santa outfit, and then he's like in a striped like wetsuit. And then there is Jose, who is the Mexican counterpart, and he helps Joe and Ken and Rosa down in Mexico City. He is a reference, supposedly a reference to Jose Guadalupe Posada, who I apologize if I don't know who that is. I'm sorry. I want to say he's related to the Mexican Revolution, but I could be wrong. But like he helps them get the Digimon at better in like the temples that are down there. And then there is Ilya, who is the Russian counterpart, who helps Sora and Yoli, and then Anna, Sonia, and Yuri in Russia. He's basically like, he shows up after they've dealt with all the Flymon, and he's like, okay, now we gotta go somewhere colder. And it's just like, why? And then they take them there. And so we have all of those different counterparts that show up. I think there's only those ones. Yep. And then what ends up happening is, of course, then they have to go back to the digital world, and this is when they have to fight Malamyotismon. And after they fight Malamyotismon, Gennai then shows up, and he reveals that he has Gaudamon's tail ring that she lost way back at the beginning of the second season, and he gives it back to her, and he's like, here, I brought you back your tail ring. And it actually did like all this stuff, like helping the other Digimon be able to like DNA digivolve and like all other stuff. So it's he gives it back, and he's like, Oikawa, he watches as Oikawa like sacrifices himself, his data, his remaining life force, in order to help the digital world. And so we get that, and like Gennai knows then that like Oikawa is part of that. Gennai earlier, when he had been talking with Izzy, or explained to the Digidestin when they interact with him for the first time in this season, he explains that, well, for the last several years, myself and my counterparts have actually been kind of, because Gennai is a digital data type humanoid, so he can go through like the internet and data and everything like that, and he does. And him and his counterparts have been working on kind of erasing pieces of knowledge of the digital world from different, I guess, military and governments around the world. I'm assuming there are some governments that it might be okay, and others where it's not okay. And I don't 100% know exactly how that works. They don't 100% explain which ones are there, but obviously that data continues to exist at some point, because later on in Digimon Adventure Tri, 3 years after what happens with Malamyotismon, it is revealed that, well, first of all, this is, when the Digimon are starting to be infected and stuff like that, and they're talking to Tai, and the others are talking to Diego Nishijima, talking to Tai and the others, and Diego explains that, well, we were receiving, at one point we started to receive information about these infected Digimon from a source, and he's referred to as Mr. Gennai. And like Tai and Matt are like, oh yeah, we know Gennai. He helped us out, when we were in the digital world and everything, and he was a good guy. And and then like they don't really hear anything from regular Gennai. But then this is during the time frame where they interact with Dark Gennai, who, as I said, is going to be his own video, because he's a psychotic little bastard. And he's not actually the real Gennai. He's a dark clone of Gennai that has been manipulated and turned dark. Because Gennai, because I don't remember if Gennai has a root word for something, but I know that like Gemini, in regards to like the zodiac, Gemini is like the Gemini, the twin. And so there's that. So I don't 100% know if like Gennai is like a reference to Gemini or something. I don't exactly know. But like Diego explains is to Tai and the others, oh well, he was giving us information about the different infected Digimon to try to tell us about what was going on with them, and then like the data just stopped coming. And then in like the last 2 episodes or so, in like Coexist and Future or so, when Tai and Nishijima fall down into the pit, they find the underground laboratory where they then find Gennai along with the other four, Davis and Ken and Yoli and Cody, their Digimon and them inside of these life support pods. And the original Gennai is in one of them as well. And then the Dark Gennai shows up and he's just like, oh, well, there's one pod left that's empty, and, I'm going to cut power, and the power will, I'm going to cut power to this place, and, there's enough to either keep all those pods working and keep, this area alive, or send those pods back to the real world. And then he goes away, and then, this is where Diego sacrifices himself and, puts, tricks Tai into one of the pods and then sends them all back to the real world, so that way the real Gennai is back at the real world, where you're back with the other Digidestin and he's alive and everything. And we find out that the original Gennai, the good Gennai, had actually been had been perceived as a threat by King Drazel, who is in control of Dark Gennai. Again, I'll go over Dark Gennai a little bit more in a different video. But, he's perceived as this threat because he knows so much about the digital world. And so that's why Dark Gennai and King Drazel wanted to get rid of him. And then it's, the lab explodes, and, Tai and, the other 4 plus Gennai had, safely gotten back to the real world, and, Nishijima sacrificed himself. And then, as I went over in his video, and then the next time that we see Gennai is 5 years later during Digimon The Last Evolution. What happens in Digimon The Last Evolution? Gennai is not around for very long during this, during the movie for this, but what happens is it's after Tai and Matt have gotten the timers on their Digivices, and Tai is just kind of like sitting in his apartment with Agumon, and they're just talking, and then Gennai shows up, and it is the good Gennai, which when I had initially watched this, when I had initially watched The Last Evolution, I was like, did Gennai get good again, or did I miss something? And I think I just missed the part where in the Digimon Digimon Adventures Try, and like the last 2 episodes or so, where it's like they explain, oh well, the real Gennai was actually inside of one of the life support pods. So I think I just like missed that or something. I had like glossed over that or forgot about that. So this is the actual real good Gennai. And Gennai basically confirms what Tai had heard from Menawa, that, yeah, it is true that your partnership with your Digimon will end when your potential runs out. This unlimited potential. But it is unlimited. But notes that he tells Tai that, what does it say? He explains that fate can be prevented if the Digidestined somehow obtains unlimited potential. Which I will tie this, the unlimited potential, tie this back into where I've stated before in different videos for Tai and Matt and Sora and for other Digimon, for the other Digidestined, where it's like, we know that at some point the Digidestined have to say goodbye to their Digimon. And, it's this, it's this horrible, heart-wrenching moment, of course, that would happen. And it would be horrible and heart-wrenching for any of us that would have to go through it as well with our own Digimon if they were real. That finding that unlimited potential can also apply to, I've put it in other people have said this before, because I kind of take this from what other people have said about this, that having a child gives you unlimited potential again. And not that like having more than one child will continuously give you more than unlimited potential, but having a child starts you on this unlimited potential again. And that's why I think some people are like, well, Tai's kind of, or Gennai is kind of hinting at something with Tai. He can't outright tell him that like, oh yeah, Agumon's going to disappear, Gabumon's going to go away, and the others are probably going to possibly lose their Digimon as well, depending on whenever they have kids. But, they're all going to, you're all going to lose your Digimon at some point, because you've reached the end of your potential at different points for different ones. But you've reached the end of your potential. And now you have to find an unlimited potential. He doesn't explain what that is, and it's not like, as I said, it's not like he can outright tell Ty. It's like, okay, you're gonna have to go and you're gonna have to find a woman and fall in love with her, and then have a kid. It's not like that. It's just like it has to be something that they kind of find out on their own. And admittedly, a lot of the Digidust and their kids, some of them seem to be around the same age when we see them in the epilogue at the end of season 2. A lot of the kids, some of the kids seem to all kind of be around the same age. Some of them are like a tiny bit older, just a little bit younger for like the ones that have more than one kid, but a lot of them are kind of around the same age. So I kind of put that as like, maybe they're in within, 9-10 months of each other in some cases. And like maybe it was like, you know, I think it looked like Ken and Yoli had like the oldest child out of all of the ones that were there. Maybe, I don't know. Um, but like, first one to have a kid, like our Digimon came back. And, it's not like 100% confirmed that that's the way that it's going to work, but like the others, then they subsequently all have kids. It makes sense. And like, they may have all like, oh, well, we've all reached our careers points and everything. So, we're all ready to have kids and, we're all married to whoever it is that we're in love with at that point in time. Ken and Yoli together, Sora and Matt together, some of the others possibly with each other or with others that maybe don't have Digimon or got their Digimon later on or whatever. But we don't really see Gennai anymore as at this point in time. In the redo that they're doing of Digimon Adventure, Gennai does pop up a few times in that, but again, I haven't seen that, so I don't know how much they change some of the information that he tells them, or some of the things that he does to help them along their way. But he's very much this guide type character of like, yes, just I will be your guide and I will lead you down to find your way here and find your way here. So that's what we have for Gennai. And now I'm just gonna go and record the Dark Gennai video because fun. I go down that crazy psycho rabbit hole. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.
Just trust me. After all, I'm a floating glowing guy.